I'm a big believer that entrepreneurs are natural problem solvers, right? We are natural problem solvers. We're not necessarily looking to provide value, but the problems we solve naturally do. We want to look for things that we can solve, where we can change the way the status quo has been for many years. And I think entrepreneurs naturally have that drive, and I think that's where it comes from. It's the urge to solve a problem. It's the knack for figuring it out and always learning new things in order to solve that problem.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Another edition here of the Kronos Group Podcast. Really excited for my guest today. Jordan Solender is here, and he is one of these guys who has actually done the thing everyone talks about. Built companies, scaled them, exited them, made money, along the way figured out how to do it without necessarily torching his health or family or his sanity, the thing that we are always looking for. Has done a ton of revenue, worked with everything from startups to large organizations. His work is centered around a belief that he is direct about, and that is that most growing companies, the founder eventually becomes the bottleneck. Jordan's view is that most owners think that they have a people problem or a cash problem, when in reality, everything is still running through them: decisions, approvals, direction, all of it. And whether or not owners want to admit it, many times that's what's holding the business back. I think everybody that follows the podcast knows that I have a pretty strong opinion about this also, and is one of the reasons why I was excited about having Jordan come on. So if you want to check out his work, go find him at jordansolender.com. That's SOLENDER, jordansolender.com. It'll be a link in the show notes, obviously. So if you are feeling like you are an entrepreneur, you are an operator, you're tired, stretched thin, wondering why the business can't move along, maybe you're the problem, Jordan's here to give us some ideas about that. Jordan, appreciate you having on. Thanks for coming on the Kronos Group Podcast.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be here. Talk about founder extraction. Let's do it, my friend.
Let's go with just the basic everyday question that most podcasts start with. Tell the audience in a little 5-minute background on you and where you come from before you got into business. Let's go way back and just give us an idea who you are.
From Baltimore, Maryland, family of entrepreneurs. My dad started in the Domino's pizza boom when that was going on. Watched all that growing up. He got into beverage and refreshment distribution all over the DC metro area. So I got to watch him be an entrepreneur. He was in franchising and whatnot. That being said, my first business was snowblowing, right? Just going from house to house, carrying a snowblower, my dad helping me out when it was really bad, throwing it in the back of the truck and charging the neighbors. Going from there to work for Fortune 500 and 100s like Apple, Dell, Samsung. From there, launching my first business, which was Premier Technology Advisors in 2014, and ultimately had my first 8-figure exit there in 2023. That being said, I've started and sold other companies in the entertainment and concert industry, DJ companies, event production companies, private equity. We have a whole division dedicated to founder-led capital, where we're writing checks to companies that are super interesting and innovative in their spaces with Solender Capital. So a little bit of everything. That's a little background.
So tell me about the influence that your dad had, or seeing the entrepreneurship. This question comes up a lot. Is that I get is, Jerry, where's the drive come from? And for me, I have a very different background than yours. I didn't have any of those influences, and yet it sounds like we have the same sort of drive relative to entrepreneurship. Was it as simple as just watching your dad and saying, that's what I want to do? Did you ever find a time where you're like, well, maybe I'm going to go do the 9-to-5 thing, or I enjoy doing that, when you were working for the bigger corporations? Trying to zero in on kind of that entrepreneurial urge, and kind of how did you find it, or did you always have it?
Always had it. Always had trouble not going after my own ideas. I'm a big believer that entrepreneurs are natural problem solvers, right? We are natural problem solvers. We're not necessarily looking to provide value, but the problems we solve naturally do. We want to look for things that we can solve, where we can change the way the status quo has been for many years. And I think entrepreneurs naturally have that drive, and I think that's where it comes from. It's the the urge to solve a problem. It's the knack for figuring it out and always learning new things in order to solve that problem. That naturally delivers value to the customers, to the clients, to anybody out there who wants to work with us, which is why I've kind of pivoted into my new coaching platform, where I call it Breaking Bottlenecks. That's ultimately, the buzzword these days, bottlenecks, but that's essentially what I'm doing is founder-led extraction and bottleneck breaking, getting founders out of their own way. And I think that drive just comes from solving problems one after the other, take a new one every single day. And it's fascinating to entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I agree with that. And for me, it was also the risk taking, the lack of risk taking in a 9 to 5. For me, always kind of pushed it. I didn't recognize it in my early days, but as I got older and I started my first business, I got a taste of that risk taking so that I could decide how much of that I was willing to take on and then either live with the consequences of it or obviously do well by it. So in a corporate setting, for me, entrepreneurship, as well as the things that you're talking about, was also that that ability to go out and take what I was willing to do time-wise or money-wise and put it on the line to try to get something better with no guarantee.
They say there is a correlation between entrepreneurs and both adrenaline junkies.
Yeah.
Being able to risk it all and push through that risk to get to the reward is something that is not found too common in people these days, which is why I think you have a lot of 9 to 5ers just happy and fine, but you put people like us in that 9 to 5 role, we're going to go insane. And I think that's what's happened to a lot of entrepreneurs as they start. I started in a 9 to 5 and realized very quickly, this is not built for me. This structure is not built for me. I wanted, just like you, to put it on the line, see what I can do, see what I was made of, see if I could solve a problem. But when you first put it on the line, I bet you solved the problem. You saw a place where there was a weak spot and you took the risk to figure out, how do I solve this problem? How do I do it better? I'd be curious, what was that for you?
I was brought in early. I was working as a messenger in a messenger company doing about $1 million a year with about 35, 40 employees. And the dispatcher sucked. And so I went to the boss after driving for 6 months and I said, look, the owner, I said, I think I can do that job better. I figure you're paying that woman 40 grand a year, 45. And let me tell you, 45 grand a year at that time in my life when I was 20 years old was a fortune. But I went to her and I said, I think I can do a better job. Pay me $10 an hour to do this job that's 10 hours a day. And, this is before technology and computers and all that's all by hand. I said, I think I can do a better job. And so I did the job for $10 an hour for 6 months and ultimately ran that company up to $5 million. But the process of doing that, where I had my hands on the day-to-day and decisions I made impacted my life and the life of others. For me, I was hooked. That was somebody else's money. I ultimately quit there at 28 and went and started my first business, which failed miserably immediately. But I was hooked at that point as a 22-year-old.
But everything I just heard there was you solved the problem of the sucky dispatcher.
Yeah, that's right.
You saw a problem, then you saw an opportunity, right?
Yeah. And I found something that I was good at. I didn't, again, I don't know how you feel about this. I'm not a do what you love guy at all. I'm an opportunities are everywhere, go get them kind of a guy. I've never made, of the hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue I've done, not a single dollar of that revenue has come from anything I'm passionate about. So I work passionately by finding opportunities that I can do profitably and then sell to people and then take those profits and go do the things that I'm passionate about. So that was probably also part of that education as a child, or as in my 20s, where I said, okay, I didn't see myself doing this for the rest of my life, but I'm really good at this. I think I can do something with it.
It's interesting. I tell my younger sister something very similar to what you just said all the time, because she's constantly talking to me either about business ideas or if she put this much effort into running her own business as opposed to working a 9 to 5, that it would blow up. And to your point, obsession beats talent every time. In my mind, because you could be super passionate about something, you could love something, but if you're not obsessed with it, right? If you're not obsessed with that thing and you don't have the drive, to your point, it's not going to go anywhere. Obsession beats talent every time. You could be talented at something, but if you're not obsessed with it, right, you're not going to perfect it. You're not going to drive towards goals. You're not going to get towards outcomes. You're not going to end up with millions of dollars in revenue. So to your point, you don't have to love what you're doing, but you do have drive and you want to take those rewards, and fruits of labor and go do that passion. That makes sense because you had the drive, because you were obsessed with making it work.
I think too that people aren't in love with things the way that they think they are until they have to try to make a living off of it. And to your point, that level of dedication and how deep you have to go and how much that commitment is, I think that love of something necessarily doesn't drive that. My love was my family. I started my first company after my first son was born at 28, and it turned on the caveman in me, right? I wanted them to stay in the cave. I wanted them to have I grew up in abject poverty. I wanted them to have a different life than me. And I was going to go out and hit pterodactyls over the head and drag it back. And I didn't care how, what the risk was to me. And for me, that was all of the drive I need to figure out wherever the pterodactyls might be that I could go hunt down. And so that's kind of where that philosophy came from, that I'm going to go do what I'm going to work passionately to feed my family. And whatever that direction was, I was going to follow it. Now, I've lost fortunes. I've made fortunes and I've lost them. So I've invested and done work in, I don't know, half a dozen at least different industries. Some have panned out very well. Some have not, but it wasn't from a lack of trying equally at everyone, driven by this passion to feed my family and give them a better life than I had.
Yeah, that's a good point. If that passion shows up differently for everybody. I'd love to hear a little more about the caveman thing you're talking about, though. It's an interesting thought process, how your family comes into play in how you want your life to be when you're first starting that entrepreneurial journey. You want to do for your family. You don't want them to be in the same place as you. It's that natural instinct of the family leader. And it's an interesting theme when you put it against the tendencies of an entrepreneur to solve a problem. Because entrepreneurs, like we said earlier, right, are typically risk takers. They are not risk adverse. They're trying to put it all on the line. But then when you put it up against the caveman mentality of be safe, do everything here. Interesting talk track, right, of how entrepreneurs reconcile these two themes, because one says, I got to do the safe thing, which is what all the 9-to-5 people are doing. And the others are going, yeah, but I got to put it all on the line to make this work.
I think that that as a hunter, and I'm in Tennessee now. I lived in Oregon for first 50 years of my life, and I've been a hunter. The analogy of when you are in a cave, back in the caveman days, and the fire's burning, and there's only one entrance, and you can put your back to the wall, and you can see all of the danger coming at you, and you have your wife and your family right there, and it's comfortable. And that's great, but someone has to go outside of the tent, or out of the cave, I should say. And when you go hunting, that's as about a risky a maneuver as you're going to have in the environment that I'm describing, meaning you're out there, and again, everything up above you wants to eat you, and everything down below in the grass wants to eat you, but you're out there trying to eat anything you can find or kill anything you can find so you can drag it back to the family. So that analogy for me always worked, because I thought, the basis of who I am, my purpose in life is to provide for my family in a way that I didn't have as a kid. And if I was going to change those up and not be like my siblings and not be like the community around me, I needed to think at a very different level. And so for me, that was the second my son was born, man, I felt like I could crack an atom. I mean, I felt like I needed to go out. I was a worker. I got my first job as an 11-year-old. I paid taxes as an 11-year-old in 1980. I've never not had a job since. I had a passion for working. I was driven. But when my son was born, it took it to that other level where I said, okay, I need to start to really put some of these talents together and get out there and risk bigger. So that means, bigger game, if you will, bigger prey. And the analogy of the hunting and going out at the risk of myself, but making sure I am feeding my family, drove me in a way that really nothing else did. When my son was born, it changed my life overnight. And that kind of passion, if you will, to provide for my family gave me all of the drive I needed to go out and execute in some of these businesses at a level that I wouldn't otherwise, because what do I care about the delivery business or gas stations or car washes or convenience stores or building houses or development or any of the things I have done? Feeding my family and making sure they had a better life drove me to do those as well as I could.
Yeah, it's that motivation, that Lazarus pool type motivation, right? That forbidden fruit that I'm going to tap into the need of feeding my family, keeping them safe, making sure they have what they need to risk it all, to have a better life. So, yeah, I mean, to the point I was making earlier, it plays in with the themes really well. It's insanely motivating. For
Yeah.
especially if you have the personality type, those ENTJ personality types of leader, visionary, architect.
Yeah, and from an entrepreneurial perspective, it ties in. You're absolutely right in that. Also, as the owner, as the father, right, of the children, as a husband to my wife, it's my job to sacrifice me for the greater good of them. And so, as a business owner who's had thousands of employees, my approach has always been, right, I'm the rock that they crash against. You don't
Yep.
get to commiserate with them. You don't get to be emotional with them. You don't get to cry about their problem or that, give them my problems. All of that comes one way. So it kind of fed itself, one kind of begat the other. And to that end, that's a nice dovetail into what you're doing, and talking about founder bottleneck. So I'll start my question this way with you. I hear all of the time, I see social media all of the time, which I push back on, that entrepreneurs, in particular new entrepreneurs, need to be working on the business and not in the business.
Yep.
What is your take? This seems to be a prevalent, throughout social media, that people are constantly chastising others about not work, about they're wasting their time working in their business. You need to start working towards working on your business, in particular in the early days. What's your thoughts on that?
You need to figure out what's going to have the biggest impact on your business immediately. That is going to change. That's a moving target. It will be a moving target the entire length of the business, whether you are a Fortune 100 company or you are a startup sitting in your mom's basement and you don't have a family yet, right? Either one of those, it's still a moving target. Your impact is in your time you do not get back. You have a small window to solve these problems typically when you become an entrepreneur, right? You see the problem, somebody else is going to get out there and solve it, like the dispatcher thing. Somebody else could have easily solved that, jumped in. You have a small window. As soon as you grab onto it, you need to figure out where you're placing your time. So wasting time working in the business, not on the business. When people talk about being in the business, they're talking about doing these low level tasks of, I always use the inbox as the first low level task that you can delegate off to an assistant or an EA of some sort. But a low level task, answering an email, sending your calendar invites, business development at some point, are all going to be low level tasks for you. You need to be figuring out strategy. How do I continue to provide value and solve the problem for my clients, my customers? How do I make their experience better? How do I increase different lines of service in solving that same problem? If you're in a plumbing company or an HVAC or a home services based company, you picking up the phone every single day when somebody calls in, not a good use of your time. You figuring out how to roll more trucks because your demand is so high, great use of your time. So it's really just figuring out on a day-to-day basis, where am I going to have the most impact? That is working on the business. Working in the business, to your question earlier, is doing those low-level tasks that don't have impact. You need to be able to have impact on your business on a daily basis. Wake up in the morning and figure out, where do I have the biggest impact today? What can I delegate off? What can be repeatable in a process that I build for somebody else to do so I can have impact over here? As soon as you start approaching your business that way, it's amazing how fast you'll scale.
I think then it might be a matter of interpretation for that, because I don't disagree with what you just said there. Because personally, for me, I remember very clearly the first company I did, we did 4 million the first year, and then 8 million, and then 12 million, and then 14 million. And I didn't even really have any idea what I was doing, to be honest with you. And so that whole time I was like paying my own bills and, doing all my own stuff in my own home. And my assistant came to me, who I had at the time, and just hired her about a year and a half before. And she said, "You need to let me do that for you. But I'm this poor kid from the streets. What do I know? I can pay my own bills. I can, take care of my own appointments. I can set all that stuff up." And she hit me over the head. This has been 25 years ago. She hit me over the head, and she's like, "No, no, no, no. Your time is too valuable to be doing those things. You got to let me do that stuff for you. And then you go do the stuff that makes us money." And so I agree with you on that. I think it's a matter of interpretation, because what I see is people saying that They shouldn't be in their business. And that never made sense to me, meaning that any business I've been associated with, every business owner I've ever known, particularly in the first few years of a startup, they're involved in the business. To your point, they're not putting a box on a shelf. They're not dispatching an order. They may not be answering the phone, but they know how the box is put on the shelf. They know what's going on when the phone's getting answered. They know what's happening in the dispatch. So from my perspective, that's, a combination of working on and in the business in order to grow that business. But give me your take on that from that perspective.
100%. You always need to have a pulse. If you're so far removed and you don't have a pulse on what's going on in your own business or how things are done, you're too far removed. I do think social media right now is idolizing the 1% of the 1%, your Hermosis, your Dan Martells, your Ed Milet's,
1,000%. Say it again. I agree 100,000%.
Yeah, they're putting these guys on pedestals going like, look, I don't even touch my businesses and you can start a business too and never have to worry about it. That's not the reality. And they're not sharing the reality, unfortunately. I think the reality of it is you got to be in your business, but your time is valuable. I think, like you said, it's all a matter of interpretation. I think there's a middle ground. As your business grows, ultimately, you need to figure out where you have the biggest impact. And you need to keep moving that target to where that big impact happens. Your time as the business owner, if everything lives in your head, you can't scale and you can't delegate. So you teach, you document, you delegate, and then you move on to the next high impact task. And that's how scale happens. When you get to a point of these social media gurus telling you, get out of your business, it's wrong to be in your business, I feel bad for these younger entrepreneurs because they don't know. They're thinking that, I don't have to grind and put the box on the shelf. Well, I don't tell anybody on my team in any of my businesses to do something that I haven't done personally. Mm-hmm. So if you're thinking you can just buy a business and not understand how that business operates or how that box goes on the shelf or how an order deploys or how software ships, you're in for a rude awakening.
Yeah, I'm telling you what, I'm a sucker to propaganda. Now I'm pissed at myself because as I was researching you, I'm so sensitive about this work in your business versus on your business because of every one of the names that you just
I'm the same way.
Dan Martell probably more than any, but to your point, and so as I was reading through your bio and going over your stuff, getting ready for this podcast, in my head, I'm like, well, this guy's saying, I got to talk to this guy because maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I'm the dumb one and there is something to be gleaned here or mined here, and I'm just missing it. So I'm going to come into this with an open mind. The reality is that you think just like I do. But I was so brainwashed by hearing all of this on social media by all these big influencers that I just assumed this is what everybody is trying to say. And again, the reality is that I think that I agree 100% with what you say, but I interpret what they say as being the same thing, or what you say as being the same thing that they say, because it's so prevalent.
Yeah, it's definitely the popular thing to preach right now. Get out of your business. But the interpretation, as you're saying, for these younger entrepreneurs, the ones that are just starting out or trying to solve a problem and provide value, they're thinking, I don't need to do any of the hard work or know how it runs. I just need to delegate everything. And the answer is no, that's not the case. Your business is not going to work that way. I'm a big believer in founder extraction, is probably what you heard on social media from me. I'm a huge believer in that. But you have to understand, you have to do it first. If you can't document, if you can't articulate, if you can't teach how it's going to happen and how it needs to happen and show what good looks like, your business can't scale, period. Full stop.
You're going to love this story, Jordan. I had a couple of kids approached me and they were looking to buy a business and they wanted some feedback. I always tell everybody, just call me on my social media. I'll talk to you. I'm happy. I love business, and the young guys in particular, if I can help them. And they were looking at an HVAC business. And I said, okay, I know a good fair amount about the HVAC business, has been in construction most of my life. What are you thinking about? Well, they were going to buy one. Okay. And it's X, Y, and Z, and it comes with some real estate. And I said, okay, that's great. But so again, what do you know about HVAC? Nothing. So I said, you're going to buy this business, the owners are going to disappear, you're going to be left with it, and you don't even know what to do with it. I mean, but they literally were staring at me, blinking, the two of them, like I was the crazy guy because they thought they could just go buy this existing HVAC business for whatever it was worth and then just live off of the profits because the thing's going to run itself because of what they saw on social media.
Yeah, I had one of those recently. I had a friend, a close friend actually, that approached me about everybody's into not car washes, the laundry, like the coin op laundry centers right now. I know Cody Sanchez made them really popular, right? Of buying a bunch of laundry centers. They were going to buy one. They had never owned anything before. I was like, well, do you know how collections work? Have you started doing diligence? What happens when a machine breaks? You know, is that operator staying? So they ended up buying this business. In the original deal that they showed me, sounds like you and I are, by the way, cut from the same cloth. I love talking business. I'll do it all day, right? I'll somehow all my social conversations go this way too.
Yep.
My wife gets really annoyed.
Yep.
But that being said, they ended up buying this business, and the deal that it started with after talking to me was a totally different deal, right? We talked about keeping their operator on, negotiating a training period so they could learn and they could go through and they could shadow. Because originally, the owner was just going to sell it to them and then get out of there. And I'm thinking to myself, you know nothing about this. You've never collected. All you've looked at is their books with a CPA. And do you understand their books even? And what that looks like? Can you tell me, are they on cash or accrual? And they were like, what?
Right.
So I said, why don't you talk to them about, negotiating a training, an operational handoff, keeping that person on for a period of a year, and then an extra year just for questions and remote support, right? Things of that nature, so you could learn that business. So they ended up buying that business. They ended up buying 2 more, and now they're trying to franchise this thing out in the Virginia area, which is great. That it sounds like they're doing awesome now. I'm really happy for them. But they went through about 1.5 years of training. And they were like, thank God we did that. I had dinner with them not too long ago. But they said, they learned a ton. And they were on their hands and knees. They were fixing machines. They had no idea what they were getting into. And what's interesting about it, and I'm sure the HVAC guys, did they end up purchasing that business or no?
No, they took my advice and went the other direction. Now they're looking at a car wash, actually.
Okay. Well,
yep.
Maybe they're listening to this and they'll get the operational and training, built into the deal. But when I had dinner with them the other night, a couple weeks ago, I asked them, I said, if you knew how much work, manual labor, and knowing the ins and outs of the business that you do now, that you were going to have to go through to make this thing successful. And thankfully they did it. They did the work. They got their hands dirty. They understand it before they started hiring people to just run this thing and oversee it. I said, would you have still done the deal? And they were like, hell no.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, it would have scared them away. And I said, but aren't you glad now you know? And he goes, yeah, because now I can walk into any one of these centers that are for sale. I can say, I can eyeball a machine. That's about to go out. This is about to be expensive. And I said, now you learned an entire industry. And it was all because you built right into your first deal, teach me. So if you're not willing to be taught and you think you're too good to learn new tricks or get your hands dirty or be in the business, you better know every single thing about that business and be able to do it before you teach. Again, show what good looks like. Yeah. If you can't show what good looks like to employees, don't buy that business.
Yeah, I agree. The other part of that, or the thing that I would add to that to anybody listening, give me your feedback on that, is also people aren't aware of what they're capable of. So as an entrepreneur like you and me, I know what I can do, but I didn't when I started. So as I said, I just went in all in as an entrepreneur. I had a brand new kid at home. I had a half-finished house and no salary, and I didn't get paid for 2 years. So I had to go referee basketball games at night. I had a business doing $4 or $5 million a year, and I wasn't making any money. I hadn't figured out how to do that yet. But I learned that, man, I'm capable of a whole lot more than what I thought. The amount of time I'll put into work, the amount of learning that I can do, my ability to shut up and listen and pay attention, to reach out to other people to instruct me and tell me what to do. As a kid from the streets, I was never really good about taking instruction. So all of those things opened my eyes to it. And many times I think that holds entrepreneurs back from making that jump because they want to try to check every box. They want to try to know every single thing. And I was like, some point, you just got to jump. You got to do your due diligence, to your point, But sometimes you're not going to be able to check all them boxes, and you'll figure it out when you get on the other side.
Analysis paralysis. I think that probably stops people from starting businesses more than anything. More than anything, analysis paralysis. Is the problem I'm solving big enough? Is my business unique enough? Am I providing enough value? I'm sure you'll agree with this. Every business at this point, I mean, with the rare exception of like an innovative, like an Uber or a Venmo or something like that, every business model is pretty much copy and paste at this point. It's just about, can you solve the problem better than the person that did it before you? Are you providing something unique about that model? But everything is pretty much copy and paste at this point. So don't get so much analysis paralysis. You know, not everything's going to be perfect. To your point, it's not everything's always going to be perfect. It's not always going to check the right boxes. But if you're willing to roll up your sleeves and put in the work and understand how everything functions and what good looks like, I'm going to keep going back to that theme. What does good look like in this new business or existing business that you have? If you can't show that, right? Don't buy that business. Don't start that business. Don't take that jump. Realize it's a lot of work going in. And these entrepreneurial gurus out there that are touting, you know, I can go to Rome at a moment's notice and buy these supercars. They went through that at one point, but they are the highest level, right, of removal, right? And a lot of business, I mean, a lot of business is luck too. Right place, right time.
Yeah. Yeah. I to that end, I think it's been I appreciate a founder who has grown to hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, multiple companies, and remembers where they came from, because I think most of them forget. I mean, personally, I don't know anybody that hasn't started a business, and I know hundreds of business owners. I know hundreds of millionaires that have built their businesses out over being in business for 30 years. I just don't know one that wasn't doing everything when the business started, trying to save every dime that they could, trying to cut every corner possible in order to make the thing profitable, didn't work crazy hours and dedicate and sacrifice and do all of those things. I just don't know any of them. But if you listen to those guys who are now in the 100 millionaire and the billionaire status, it's like, I've never met those guys. So if they exist, I don't believe that they do. I think you forgot where you came from. Maybe if you were, you know, a wildcatter in Texas, you know, trying to pull oil out of the ground. You didn't just walk up and suddenly it happened and now you can go retire to Maui and let other people do the work for you.
Yeah, to that end, my wife hates this story, but I think it's hysterical. I have 3 boys under the age of 5. And when our second was born, I was in that phase of doing everything in the crazy hours, to the point of she goes into labor, we have the baby, we go up to the hospital room to rest, she falls asleep, I hop on a Zoom to onboard a new sales guy.
Yeah, you're talking to the either the right guy or the wrong guy, because all 3 of my kids were born and I went back to work.
Yeah, and that's what it is, and that's the sacrifice you make. And most of these entrepreneurial social influencers that you're talking about, right? They don't show that. They don't show that grind. They talk about it, and it's in their AI carousels that they post on Instagram, but they're not showing that grind and what that looks like, and missing those special moments, unfortunately, either with your kids or your significant other. It takes that sometimes, and I don't know how to express that in a way to future entrepreneurs that, like, you got to be, other than saying, you got to be obsessed. You got to be obsessed.
Yeah. It comes back to my caveman analogy for me, in that my job is, the second my son dropped out, my first son, I mean, she's pregnant one minute, she's not pregnant the next minute. My entire worldview changed, and a fire lit in me that I thought was already lit. And I think children are the completion of a man. And that we never really get to fully become what we are capable of until we have to provide for somebody, an offspring. Can't be a wife, can't be a girlfriend, can't even be the parents to some extent. The offspring for me really lit that fire. But at the same time, I hardly missed a baseball event. I hardly missed a game or a pageant. I have 2 sons and a daughter. They'll tell you that I always was home at 8:30 at night, and we would wrestle and fight and do all of that. And I'd put each one of them, this is 80% of the time, put each one of them to bed. At the end of the night, I was closing their door. They could tell you they're in their 20s now. They tell you right now, what are you going to be when you grow up? I would ask them. Whatever I want. I'd say, how are you going to get there? I'm going to work hard and be smart. That's 80% of the time that they, as children. Now, I had come home from work to do that. And then I went back to work when I was done. I didn't go sit on the couch. I didn't sit around and I just worked constantly, but I was home 80% for that. If you ask my kids, they could recite that to you right now. They remember it. They remember the vacations. They remember the time because I spent quality time with them. It wasn't quantity. But quantity so much turns into sitting on the couch, and nobody remembers any of that. My kids remember because there was always something being done because they spent quality time with Dad consistently.
Bingo. Quality over quantity. That 1,000. I don't know how to preach this louder, right? Quality over quantity. The fact that an entrepreneur is working a lot, and that's what in our social circles a lot of the other parents see, doesn't mean I'm not coaching football and teaching them ice hockey and giving them the skating lessons. I'm there when I need to be there. 100%. It's all about quality time. It must be an entrepreneurial thing because you're like the fourth or fifth entrepreneur that I've talked to that has said like, oh, we had mantras, that we said, what do you want to be when you grow up? Be smart, work hard. We have something in my house where I say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And because they always ask me, what do you do? And I say, I'm an entrepreneur. And they were like, how do I be an entrepreneur? And now they know it's provide value. So, yeah. For instance, we don't do allowances or anything like that. Though the things that most people give an allowance for, my 5-year-old just got into this. Most people give an allowance for is, making your bed, cleaning your room. In our minds, my wife and I's mind, those are the things that you get to do that's just what you have to do. You don't get paid for those things. Right. Now, if you want to run out and find things to do around the house that makes mommy and daddy's life easier, that's a different story. And we'll give like 25 cents, for, hey, you can walk the dog around the backyard. You can't walk the dog around the neighborhood yet, but you can walk the dog around the backyard, or you can do little things like that. We'll give you 25 cents. It almost mirrors, what the world is like. Go solve a problem,
Yeah. I agree that, and I've heard you say this twice now, and your wife and my wife bought in, and she understood exactly what the program was from the very beginning. And so, I hate to say it, but I've probably been late to dinners with the family more times than I've been on time. But it wasn't because I was in a bar or I stopped somewhere on the way home from work. It's probably because I'm in the parking lot on a phone call. And as long as I didn't abuse that, she was 100% on board, and I never did. So I'm not a drinker. I'm not a smoker. I don't do any of those things. So I wasn't hanging out in bars on my way home. It was always work or at home. And, this idea that we have to give up our dreams, the effort for our dreams as entrepreneurs to somehow have this perfect life at home, because you can't have both. I've been married now 28 years. We've been together 32. My sons are 28 and 24. My daughter is 26. They moved here to Tennessee with me 5 years ago. 2 of them are in the Army. I see them almost every day or talk to them every other day. I don't recognize the world that's a social media influencer entrepreneurs are telling people to do relative to time with family and or the business, and that you have to pick one or the other.
This could be an entire episode in itself, Jerry.
We've almost ruined the whole episode.
This could be an entire episode in itself. It's unbelievable.
Sorry, I'm passionate about having kids. Men need to go have kids.
Yeah, no, me too.
They need to go slay pterodactyls and drag them back to the cave, and they can have everything that they want. It is a big point of contention for me. But let's get back to business a little bit. Talk to me about one of the things that stuck out to me that I saw that I agree with 1,000% is that too many people want to go straight to hiring before they get their house in order and figure out if that's just something that they want. Number one, I don't think people appreciate how difficult it is having employees. So for me, I want to have as few as I can, not as many as I can. When I was younger, I wanted to have as many as I can. The same as, I always say sales is easy. Selling profitably is hard. And so I ran businesses in the early days where I was just selling. I had to learn how to sell profitably. The same thing, I was looking at that top line number, and the same thing about employees, right? I wanted to have as many employees as I can. I didn't understand that disconnect, so I learned those lessons very difficult, very difficult let me try to say that again. I learned those lessons the hard way. So when I saw this, that this is one of the things that you teach, that resonated. So let's dig into that a little bit and give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I have two thoughts on hiring that I say to everybody if they're thinking about hiring somebody. That is, you always hire slow and you fire fast. That's the first thing. Hire slow, fire fast. End of story. Full stop. The second thing is, if your systems aren't in place, hiring is only going to throw gasoline on a fire that's already there. You need to have systems that people can walk into to understand, again, common theme, what does good look like for their role, right? If it's a bookkeeper, what does that look like? If it's a salesperson, what's the perfect sale? What's the pitch? If you don't have systems and you decide to go hiring a bunch of people, you're just increasing your chaos around you. You need to dial in your business systems first. Systems create clarity. I preach this a lot in my content, in other podcasts, and on wherever I can. Systems create clarity for your employees, for yourself, for your investors if you have them, whoever. Hire slow, fire fast. Systems create clarity. Don't throw gasoline on a fire, right? That's not what you want to do. Having to your point of hiring a bunch of people doesn't mean you're selling profitably, right? That's a very similar situation where you're throwing gasoline on a fire. If you don't have systems in place, then hiring people is just throwing gasoline on a fire. Dial that in.
And to that end, then that dovetails into delegation the same way, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you need to talk about delegating before hiring, figuring out exactly what you need, because again, the more people you hire, the more pressure you're going to put on your margin and the more stress you're going to have separately. But then as you start to pressure your margin, the more your stress is going to go up, both from having too many employees and then what that employee is actually costing you. And I think there's a disconnect. There was for me. So most of everything I talk about and teach and most of my views come from my practical experience, mostly from me screwing it up and having to learn it the hard way and costing myself millions of dollars. But practically in this case, how hard it is. You'd say you lose $100. People don't understand how hard it is to make that $100 back. Right? It's like gaining weight. It's easy to gain weight. It is hard to lose weight. And business is the same way. So in my kind of experience was that I saw a mistake get made. You try to fix that mistake and straighten it out. But if you've cost yourself $10,000 and you're working on a 10% margin, that's 100 G's worth of new work. And I just don't think we think about it that way. And I'm assuming you're trying to teach in a way that gets people to not do that, not make that mistake like I did before they do it, save them the 10 grand or ultimately having to earn the 100 grand.
Yeah, well, I'm a big believer that if you can document it, you can delegate it. And it's never going to be right the first time, even if you document it down. And that's why I like to implement, a feedback loop, right? Every single time somebody goes through that process or that task and they have a question, they give me the feedback, hey, this wasn't in that documentation, or this edge case popped up. I go back, I redocument until it is perfect and it's done the way it needs to be done to either increase profitability or done the way I would want it to be done, or in a successful way that has the right outcomes. So you're looking for outcomes here. But if you can document something, you can delegate something to avoid having those massive pitfalls in revenue or profitability, I believe. So big part of my teachings and coaching program is how to document correctly, how to guide, how to build out what it's good look like. That way, when you do bring on those people and they come into your systems and they come into your documentation, as long as it's as, let's just say 80% as good as the way Jerry or Jordan would do it, the 20% that's missing, that's ego. And entrepreneurs who are just starting that out, you got to put that ego aside. Yeah. There's nobody that's ever going to be as much in your business with drive as Jerry. Nobody's going to come in and care as much as Jerry would or Jordan would. So if they can do it 80% of the way that you're doing it, accept that. Let's move on. Take it as a win. And we'll do it again. Let's keep running it back.
I'm assuming that you have heard this probably even more times than I have, which is I can't grow. I can't get new people because they can't do it as well as I can. I'm stuck doing this amount because no one can do it as well as I can. I'm going to assume you've heard that once or twice.
Oh, that's my favorite. That's my favorite thing I hear. I have heard that twice today, this morning on coaching calls no joke, twice this morning from clients that brought me on as just an accelerator coach to figure out what's going on in my business. Why can't I get out of my own way? One said this morning, literally to me, he owns an app that deals in powerlifting, but he's pro athlete. It's an app you can track your stuff in, and he's like, there's just nobody that can code like I can. There's nobody that can do it the way I'm doing it, and nobody that can think about the way I'm doing it. And I'm like, well, let's talk about your talent pipeline. Let's talk about, we can talk about a million things, but at the end of the day, we figured out he wasn't documenting what he was doing
Right.
at all,
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
all. And I'm like, you need to start here.
Right.
So, yeah, I hear that one all day, every day. It's a common theme.
Right. I love that. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but I wrote this question down specifically that because again, back to the influencers and how they communicate. You frame freedom. It seemed to me as not as a reward for growth, and I want to talk about that word freedom, but as a mechanism kind of that enables that growth. And I agree with that. I think that in the social media world, freedom means bikini-clad girls in the south of France while your business runs back in Topeka, Kansas. I don't think that's what you're saying.
Nope, not at all. And I'm, again, open to interpretation, right? But I'm glad we're having this podcast now, because now you know what I'm a little bit about.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, freedom means leverage. If you can step away from your business and do the disappearing test, that means you can work on your business. And this is tying in a whole bunch of things we've already talked about. Working in versus on your business, discovering what freedom looks like, delegating versus and documenting and automating. If you can have the freedom to step away from your business and go be with your kids, and that business is still running correctly, then you are able to focus on it and let it scale, because everybody's doing what they need to be doing. Whether it's automation or agentic AI or the right people in place with the right documentation and systems, you being able to step away is the freedom. Because if you can step away, you can work on the business. You can look at strategy. How do I get bigger? How do I add this new line of business? How do I provide more value to my customers and clients? So that's the way I'm interpreting freedom. It's the ability to step away from your business while it's continuing to grow and you can work on it. Definitely not the partying on the yachts and the bikinis and whatnot. So you can't leave your business. Freedom in my mind is, once you get that freedom, that means you've developed enough leverage in your business to start working on the strategy of it. And that's where the owner should be, taking you from founder to owner.
So you're saying that that working 10 minutes a week and having a Lamborghini isn't the way life is?
Not the way life is, no, unfortunately.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we were on the same page.
Yeah. To be one of them, though. To be one of them.
Right, for sure. All right, I want to do a quick little speed round here. Again, as I told you at the beginning of the podcast, the hour goes by just like this. In particular, when we have a couple of people who have some idea or some experience about what they're talking about. But here we go. Give me some quick answers,
Sure.
and let's not overthink it too much. The task founders should stop doing first almost always.
Email.
Well, interesting. Okay.
Email.
Okay. Well, now I'm going to break my own rule. Email. Tell me a little bit more about that.
As soon as I delegated out my email, and I stopped sending out the calendar invites. I stopped doing the repetitive, hey, can you answer this question? Can you book this for me? When do you have time for lunch? And I gave that to my assistant. My world opened up for the impact tasks that I needed to make. If I'm focused heavily on business development because I'm short on revenue, but I'm getting slammed by my inbox, I can't go make a big impact and go generate us revenue. Email is the easiest thing that you can do. Have your VA, have your executive assistant sit on your emails for 2 to 3 weeks, understand how you would respond to things, watch the fringe cases, and go. Let them come to you with questions, answer those once or twice, document how you would answer it, let them go. Let them sit in your email.
Over time, then you have to answer less, and she or he does more.
Bingo. And my time is now dedicated to more impact opportunities.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's going to resonate with a lot of entrepreneurs, me included. The biggest lie founders tell themselves about delegation. I think we covered that.
Only I could do it this well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. One metric every owner should track weekly if they want to scale.
If they want to scale, hours spent on $10 tasks. How much time are you spending on a bullshit task? Pardon my language for the listeners. How much time are you spending on tasks that don't have impact? How much time are you spending on that?
Wasting time on things that don't make you money.
Well, not necessarily don't make you money, but don't have an impact, right? I go back to that impact. So.
Okay. The clearest sign that you're burnt out from your experience as a founder or a business owner.
If you feel too stressed out to put your phone down when you're with your family.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. And again, interpretation on that one is something else. I don't subscribe or ascribe to the burnout theory. I don't ascribe to the self-help theory. I don't ascribe, the I need a timeout. I need me time. I need to be closed in a room, quiet time. I don't ascribe to any of that because the saber-toothed tigers are not waiting for me to get a timeout, right? Going back to my original analogy. But at the same time, anytime I want to, I could put that phone down throughout all of my career and go sit down with the family a little bit, even though I may have felt like I couldn't. So I think a lot of people, just to pull on that thread a little bit, you tell me if you think this is right or wrong, a lot of people think they can't put the phone down when in reality they can. But I don't know what the reasons would be for risk. They're concerned about what's going to happen. They think if they step away for an hour, something's bad. I mean, we used to go to movies all of the time. I turned my phone off. So you can't get me for 3 hours. I'm out with my family at the movies. And so maybe there's a little more psychology into that one also.
Well, I think it goes back to your question of defining what freedom in the interpretive answer is, right? If your question was how to know if somebody's burned out. Well, if you're so burned out because you don't feel you can step away and have the freedom to do what you want to do, that's what I meant by that. Mm-hmm. You got to be able to feel that you can step away. Otherwise, there's work to be done on your business to get that freedom. Like the goal here is to get that freedom so the business can scale. These go hand in hand. Freedom and scale go hand in hand.
Yeah. I like that. I agree with that. I'm so glad that we had this conversation. I'm pissed that these things are only an hour long because I think that we could have delivered a lot of value to people just based on really, again, I always say my mistakes have taught me a whole lot of what to do as opposed to what not to do. And between the two of us, we could have probably given people a lot of good information over and above, I think, what we already did. So I appreciate it. Tell people how to get a hold of you and kind of really quick, again, describe what it is that you can do for them.
Absolutely. Get a hold of me, jordansolender.com for any and all of our businesses. Mainly what I'm working on right now and the most exciting thing that I have going on is founder-led businesses and dealing with founder extraction. How do we create that freedom? How do we create that leverage? Let's get you back to scaling. Let's get you from founder to owner.
Yeah, I like it. We'll link your stuff, like I said, in the show notes. So everybody go check it out, especially if this is hitting the nerve and this sounds like something that you should be paying attention to and following up on. That's probably a good thing. Jordan, I appreciate you coming on. And to everybody else, remember the Kronos Group is my peer group. I just started it up. I'm filling the cohorts now. And it is for operators who are looking for the wisdom of the crowds. It was so important to me as a startup entrepreneur at 30 years old. The group that I got into, which is still together 20 years, 25 years later, absolutely changed my fortunes. And so I want you all to go check out thekronosgroup.org and reach out to me and let's have a conversation. Jordan, fantastic, man. I told you the hour would go quick. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Jerry. Appreciate you.